India has been quietly making a major shift in how it manages its money. According to a new report on Bloomberg, new data shows that India's holdings of US Treasury bonds have fallen to a 5-year low. They're now down to about $174 billion, a sharp drop of more than 25% from their peak in 2023. Now, here's why this is important. For decades, US treasuries have been seen as the safest place in the world to park foreign reserves. They're backed by the world's largest economy and supported by the dollar's dominance. But India is now reducing its exposure to the dollar, and it is not alone. Several big economies are looking for alternatives to dollar assets. But first, let's talk about India. There are three main reasons why India is doing so. The first one is to protect the rupee. India's currency has come under heavy pressure after trade tensions with Washington and steep American tariffs on Indian exports. So by selling US bonds, the Reserve Bank of India gets the dollars, which it can use to buy rupee and support its falling currency. The second reason is the fear of sanctions. After the US froze Russia's foreign reserves in 2022, many countries began asking a very important question. What if we are next? If you hold too many dollar assets, it means you're vulnerable to US political decisions. And experts say that India wants to reduce that risk. Which brings us to the third and the most important reason in all of this: diversification. India is shifting more money into gold and other reserve assets. Its gold purchases have surged in recent years, mirroring moves by China, Brazil, and Poland. To put it simply, the central banks of these countries are no longer putting all of their eggs in one basket, or the dollar basket in this case. It doesn't mean that the dollar is not an attractive option. Economies like India are now interested in diversifying where they park their money. Now, this shift is also linked to current geopolitics. Remember, ties between Washington and New Delhi have been strained, thanks to the unfair trade war waged by the United States of America on India over disputes over oil imports from Russia. Last year's sudden deterioration in ties reportedly jolted Indian policymakers. India started reassessing its financial exposure. Analysts note that India is making sure that its economy is not over-dependent on any one country. And it's not like India is abandoning the dollar. US treasuries still make up around 1/3 of its reserves, and foreign ownership of US debt remains near record highs. So this is not a collapse of confidence. It's just what a recalibration looks like, which brings us to the next part of this story. What will be the implications of this entire move be? It's big. When large economies reduce their reliance on the US debt, it raises questions about America's financial dominance, about whether the dollar will remain unchallenged in the long term. And a recent survey found that nearly 60% of central banks are now actively looking for alternatives. And that tells its own story. Some experts believe that India's selling may slow down if a US-India trade deal is finalized and the rupee stabilizes. But many say that the broader trend is irreversible. The world is becoming more fragmented and more cautious, more strategic, and more protectionist in its policies. So what we are seeing right now is not just a story of one economy or a few countries. It is a wider story. And the Indian economy is just trying to position itself for a more uncertain world, for a world where even the dollar is no longer taken for granted. A new revelation from inside Israel's own borders has come to light. 25 people now stand indicted for spying for Iran. These are not foreign agents slipping across borders, but Israelis and long-term residents accused of betraying their own state. And this is not an isolated breach. It is a pattern. It is a surge, and it raises the question: how deep has Iran's intelligence network already penetrated Israel? According to Israel's security agency, the Shin Bet, of the 25 spies that were indicted, many were Jewish Israelis. Most of them worked for money, and investigators say that they photographed major installations, tracked sensitive locations, and may have passed intel across enemy lines. The arrests come as tensions between Israel, Iran and the United States hover near a breaking point, with fears of another war breaking out. The Shin Bet further disclosed that Iranian recruitment efforts exploded in 2025. The number of Iranian plots using Israelis as spies rose by 400% in 2025 as compared to 2024. Incidentally, 2024 had witnessed the exact same percentage rise, which is of 400%, when compared to 2023. According to the Shin Bet, across 2025, Israeli counterintelligence blocked 120 separate espionage operations, and this is part of a broader pattern. Last year, Iranian state television aired what it claimed were stolen files from inside Israel, including the footage of the Dimona nuclear reactor, maps of weapons programs, even names of nearly 190 Israeli scientists and military experts. There were some of those leaks shared by the very spies who are now under indictment. How much damage did they cause before authorities stopped them? And how many others remain undiscovered? The breaches inside Israel have been a major issue. In 2024, 2 Israeli army reservists were arrested, including one from the Iron Dome unit, accused of handing over classified missile defense material, including a video of batteries in action. 7 others mapped air bases later hit by Iranian and Hezbollah strikes. Local police detained more than 30 Israelis tied to Iranian intelligence. So if its own citizens keep turning, how secure is Israel's most sensitive infrastructure? And in this intelligence war, who is really winning? That is the big question. Russian drones continue to rain down on Ukrainian skies, glide bombs after ripping through frontline villages. As the war nears its 4th year, the battlefield burns, all while leaders from Moscow, Washington and Kiev gather in Abu Dhabi to decide whether peace now means partition. Well, yes, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been demanding land for peace. Not a ceasefire, not a withdrawal, but territory as the price for ceasefire. And as Ukraine freezes amid peak winter, its future may now be drawn not by soldiers, but by negotiators located over 3,000 kilometers away. According to Ukrainian authorities, Russia unleashed a new wave of attacks across the country over the past day, killing at least 6 civilians and injuring more than 40 others. More than 100 drones crossed Ukrainian airspace overnight, including dozens of long-range Shahid attack drones, many of which hit homes, power stations and civilian buildings across a dozen locations. The heaviest damage struck the eastern and southern parts of the country. In Donetsk, repeated strikes killed 4 people and injured 6 more. In Zaporizhia, glide bombs slammed into a frontline village, killing 1 civilian and wounding 10 others. Along the Dnipro River in Kherson, Russian fire hit residential neighborhoods, killing another person and injuring 2 people. The attacks are now further choking Ukraine's power grid, even as temperatures continue to plummet, falling below minus 20 degrees Celsius in many parts.
In our building, the power mostly comes on at night, after a missile strike, and since there's no way to cook warm food for the child.
According to Ukrainian authorities, emergency blackouts have spread to Kiev, Kharkiv, Odessa, Dnipro, and several other regions. Ukraine's energy minister called the 22nd January attack as the hardest day for the power system since the nationwide collapse in 2022. And as the bombs fall, diplomacy moves to the desert. The United States, Russia and Ukraine opened rare trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi, with territory now dominating the agenda. The meeting follows hours of talks in Moscow between Putin and an American delegation. The Kremlin has sent a clear message afterward that Russia will not accept a ceasefire without land. Officials say no peace deal can survive unless Ukraine withdraws from the eastern Donbas region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, confirmed that Donbas stands at the center of the talks that are being held at UAE.
We speak about one issue, which is the most difficult, which did not solve, And I think that trilateral meetings maybe will show each other variants. It's all about the eastern part of our country. It's all about the land. This is the issue which we're not solved yet.
The region is Ukraine's industrial backbone, rich in coal, steel and energy facilities. To put it simply, whoever controls Donbas controls the economic future of eastern Ukraine. Russian forces already occupy about 1/5 of Ukrainian territory, and on the battlefield, Moscow claims that it has captured 5 more areas this week in Kharkiv, Zaporizhia and Donetsk. Vladimir Putin, remember, has warned that if negotiations fail, Russian troops will take the rest by force. Kremlin's position is clear: land first, peace later. Now, as diplomats negotiate, the battlefield continues to rage. Whether peace will come through compromise or whether the front line will keep burning until one side finally breaks. All eyes are now on Abu Dhabi at the moment, where these talks are being held.